Hello and welcome everyone to my today's talk, this evening's talk actually, to leverage the evolution of PDE. I want to talk about the recent improvements, maybe medium or minor improvements in the Eclipse plugin development environment. So if you're looking for revolutionary new features, you might get a little bit disappointed, but I hope to show you some things that make your everyday life working easier when you work with PDE, and also show you some tips and tricks, how you can work better with PDE and save some tedious work. All the features and things I will show have been contributed by various people in a time frame ranging from 1 week ago up until 2.5 years. So some of the features you maybe know already, but I think they haven't been advertised enough, so I want to show them again. My name is Hannes Wellmann. I'm one of the project leads of PDE and M2E. I'm also a committer on some more Eclipse project and mainly work at the University of Stuttgart as a research assistant and PhD student, but also as a side job as community mentor for the Eclipse IDE, as which some of you may have recognized me already. Let's start with the first feature or new thing that I want to show you, which is actually the latest of the features I want to show you. That's the one submitted 1 week ago. This is support for version ranges and omitted version in target definition files, which basically means that if you have a target file, you probably all know already, it's now possible to simply omit the version, which means that the unit for which you have omitted the version will be resolved to the latest version. Or you can also define a version range if you, for example, don't want to use the latest version of a unit, but maybe a major version before or something like this. I will show this in a little demo. Let's see. Here we have a simple target file using the release 2024-09. This target file contains the Eclipse SDK as well as the Jakarta inject annotations in version 1, which is not the latest version. The latest version is version 2, which already contains the new Jakarta namespace. Maybe some of you knew this already. The version 1 contains the old JavaX namespace, so it is still interesting in some cases. And since we assume that we need this now, we want to have the previous version. But with the current release, you always have to specify the version exactly if you don't want to use the latest version. What you can already do is specify the version with 0.0.0, which is equivalent to which means that this unit will resolve to the latest version. But this is always a little bit tedious to write. So it's now possible to omit that. So for example, if we want to include the M2E SDK, we can just type it in, and that's it. The same or similar, you can use set version ranges. For example, it's a little bit strange on the slope to type. If we want to add, for example, the Jakarta inject annotations, but with the one version, we can see that currently in this repository we have version 2.0.1 or 1.0.5, and we want to have the one version, but maybe there are some new releases of even that older version, and we don't want to change our target all the time if there is a new version. So we specify just the range and say, okay, we want the Jakarta inject API in version 1 up to 2, but not 2. So, as usual, we can go to the. Okay, it didn't happen. Did I mistype something? This did not happen in all my trials. Yeah, I know, but it all the time worked without internet connection. Believe it or not, but it worked like this. Okay, let's try it again. Maybe I still have some. that's the worst possible start of all. Okay. Do we have M2E in the target then? No, we don't. Okay, then let's try our backup. Okay, let's try something else. That's, by the way, another feature. You can, the Content Assist now proposes child repository or composite repositories. Ah, this one is still cached. Okay, that's resolved. Okay, so yeah, this is have been quite good, because otherwise I would have forgotten to present you that now the Content Assist also suggests the child repositories of composite repositories, which is also something that I would recommend to use. Okay, good. Now first demo done. Actually, I thought it would be the simplest one, but didn't turn out to. So yeah, okay, no, maybe, sorry. Actually, I wanted to show you that, of course, after you've resolved this thing, you see that all the versions are hidden here. We have the Eclipse SDK, we have Jakarta and Inject, and we have the SLF4J simple provider. Why isn't this available? I don't know, but in this case, I don't care. Okay, anyway. Yeah, we can now resolve this. Okay. Let's go back to the slides. Some tips and tricks regarding target definitions is, or probably you know the UI editor to modify a target, and probably many of you complain about it. Personally, I usually modify my targets through the source tab, as I've just shown you here. And yeah, do all the modifications and work with the target definition in the source tab, and only switch to the definition tab to resolve the target, to check for errors maybe, as you've seen accidentally, and to inspect the full content of the resolved target, maybe if this is of interest and you want to inspect it. And then you can also, as I've shown just, you can also reload then the target platform in the source tab again through these code minings. Another recommendation from my side is to only use immutable repositories, like for example as shown for the SimRail repository, and to use no version for the if you want to have the latest version of an artifact, and to use a version range, for example up to the next major or whatever suits your needs. If you want to use an earlier version of an artifact, and not the latest version available in your repositories or in the repository you've listed. And with all that, you get a fully specified target definition that is stable, assuming that the repository you've referenced are really stable, and but this which requires minimal changes if you, for example, want to update to a new major or a new version of Eclipse. And if you're a little bit lucky and the structure of features or plugins didn't change in the meantime, the update to a new Eclipse release can just or require to update the repository URL, and you're done. Another area where improvements have been made is the product and application launching in PDE. One thing that is yet supported now is our mixed products. Previously, it was only possible to define your products either based on plugins or based on features. Now it is possible to define it based on plugins and features, so you can mix them together. That's why it was named mixed products. And it is also possible in a application launch, and if you launch a product from the workspace, to automatically include dependencies of your products into the launch. Before that, it was the case that only the plugins and features that were included in your product, respectively application, in the definition of your application, have been included in the launch, which led to the requirement that your products and launches or applications always have to be self-contained, which means that you have to add all your requirements manually, that your features have to be self-contained and need to contain the requirements, which on one side led to duplicated definitions of dependencies because you repeated the dependencies that were written in the manifest, again in the feature file, and also mean, or for example, and also mean that you had to add, for example, if you created a product, that you had to add missing dependencies manually, which is very tedious and cumbersome, and which also means that you have to remove these dependencies again if they are not required anymore, which is again also tedious and cumbersome and is often forgotten, which then again can lead to products that are larger than they have to be, and you maybe end up shipping bundles or jars that you actually that are never used. And I also have a little demo for that. And for this we will create a little product. We just go to the new product definition or product configuration wizard, create a new my product, and select it to be based on features. And for example, we just want to replicate, in this case, the Eclipse SDK. We add SDK or search for SDK at the Eclipse SDK, save it, go to the configuration section, just add the recommended plugins with the start level. That's it. And then we launch the application, or we launch the product from the workspace. Click on launch, and then the product is launched. Okay, and I forgot to select a product. Okay. Anyway, let's try it again. Save it before. Nah, I think I will have saved it too late. All the things that work when preparing. Okay. And we have a Eclipse SDK up and running. We could create projects as we would like to do. And that's it. So basically just have to specify the SDK. For example, if you also want to be capable to modify or work with Maven projects in the product you just created, you can just add the M2E feature, and maybe if you also want to work with the Lemonix M2E integration to modify your POM file to get a language server support, you just add this to your product, start it again, and then everything again should work. We just started, and now we even see the overview tab and some information about the Maven integration, and see the possibility that we can also create a Maven project. So before this, I think Christoph created an issue a long time ago with the challenge to create a product that includes M2E without knowing how to do it, and I was told that this is a quite big challenge to make it running. Now it is just add M2E and everything works fine. Okay. We've seen that the inclusion of, and of course the same also works if you just create an application. I created this from the presentation. If you don't want to build just a complete product, but just want to launch an application from your workspace, it's also working the same, or as easy as before. You just create a new configuration, go for example to plugins, tab, select this product is, or this launch is based on features, deselect all, add the SDK, click on run, and then your SDK is launched, and you can try out the latest things you implemented, for example, for the Eclipse SDK. This is taking a little bit long. Yeah, I hope you believe me that it's working. We have only a little bit of time, not much time. Okay, now we saw that the inclusion of dependencies works quite well. Actually, there's not much to show, it just works. And now, for example, assume I want to add another plugin to my product, for example, to run a different application than the workspace application for the Eclipse workspace. Assume I want to run this, or I've created this plugin called my plugin, and this has my application that I just run. This simply just prints hello and then exits. But anyway, I want to have it in my project, in my product, and before, since I said it was only possible to either base a product on plugins or features, I either had the decision to base it on plugins and add all the plugins that are in the SDK, or at least are the roots from the SDK to my product, to be able to just add my plugin simply, or I would have to create a feature that only includes my plugin, and then I could have added the feature to this product based on features, which is also not so very nice. But luckily, you can now use mixed products that are based on plugins and features. So we can just change this here, and we can simply add then in the contents tab again. We have this now, this add plugin button, and can just add my plugin. And yeah, we just remove M2E here again because it sometimes makes the start a little bit slow. And yeah, I just added my plugin, saved it, and then I choose as application my application from my app from the plugin. Then I start the product again, and then hopefully it's running. It does. Sometimes it takes a little bit, but it's often the first start of the application. Usually then it goes faster. I was actually hoping that since I started before it would run faster, but somehow it doesn't want to. Okay, finally it did. It printed hello. Everything is great. So, yes. Okay. Now you maybe have seen all these warnings about missing SLF4J providers, which means that we use in the application, for example, SLF4J, but there is no logging implementation provided, which is on first sight a little bit annoying that there is no logging implementation shipped with, for example, the Eclipse SDK. But if you're really creating products, you're in the end are actually thankful that this is not the case, because this means that you can select the logging implementation you want to have in your product when you define your product, and you don't have any dependency defining the login plugin for you, or the logging implementation you want to use. So in this case, let's say we want to use the SLF4J simple logging backend, and luckily we have a mixed product, so we can just add this here to our product. And we are almost done. We just have to add it in the configuration. Since the SLF4J is using the service loader. Yeah. Wie bitte? Ah, okay, yeah. Thanks. I will fix. Yeah. Since SLF4J is using the service loader since version 2, we need a service loader mediator in an OSGi application, so that the OSGi application can find the provider or the implementation of the services. And for this we use SPS byfly as well, and add SLF4J, and have to activate SLF4J simple, or auto start it on level 2, for example, which is usually a good value for this case. And indeed, I just added the API. Thanks for this hint. Right, so now we have this, and now everything should work well, almost. We just add a little bit of configuration for the. It's not that much magic, but SLF4J simple has to be configured through VM arguments, and it's not that easy to remember them, so I just copied and saved them. Otherwise, I would show you even longer how I type them in, and I think I stretch your patience already. Okay, let's try this again. Great, we don't see a SLF4J warning anymore, and yeah. So you can also use mixed product, for example, to choose add your logging backend to your application if you want to. Yes? I'm not absolutely confident about the answer, but I haven't noticed any problems yet. And for example, exactly this is done for all the Eclipse packages with the SLF4J simple. For example, the Eclipse SDK contains it and many of the Eclipse packages that are provided, and I haven't heard any problems reported about it. So okay. Okay. Then let's continue with tips and tricks regarding products and app launching. What I think is personally think is the best to do is with all the new or with the automatic inclusion of dependencies is to declare only the roots of your product in your product and let all the tooling manage your dependencies, like adding it and removing it if or not adding them anymore if they are not needed anymore. And this in general, using the auto-inclusion of dependencies, also provides or avoids usually the validation errors on product startup. Maybe some of you have seen these kind of dialogues a lot in the past if you have launched products. These almost not show up anymore. In some cases, they still show up, but it has always been the case that if this dialog still comes up, that you have resolution errors in your target platform state. So if you still see this dialog, I recommend checking the target platform state view and looking for unresolved plugins and fixing these. All right. The next improvement that has been done in PDE is support for OSGi Declarative Services 1.4 and some parts of Declarative Services 1.5. And one of the most prominent features, at least for me, of Declarative Services 1.4 is the possibility to use component property types annotations on classes. Component property type annotations are type-safe way to define the values of service properties through annotations for declarative services. I will show you an example in a second. And another way or another feature is constructor injection for static references. And yeah, some more. So for the demo of component property types, we assume we have a little event handler, just a simple event handler that handles events that extend, or generic events that extend the type my event, which is basically a marker interface and nothing more. And we have we have two types of event, one named event A, which has a URI payload, and event B, which has a list of string payloads, so all very simple. And we have a little or a simple event dispatcher, which delivers an event that was fired to all the OSGi services that implement the my event handler interface and declare a property of name my event type, whose value is equal to the fully qualified name of the event class. If we, for example, then look at a specific implementation of these kind of event handlers, then we can see here, for example, in the event B printer, which is in my event handler for event type B, that just prints the payload on the command line by line and declares here the required my event type property with the value my events event B, and also has a service ranking of value 2, and the mentioned event dispatcher will call, or which is then used by the event dispatcher to order or prioritize the handlers of this event. So service handlers with a higher ranking are called first. We then have, besides the event B printer, we have the event B error printer, which is basically the same and just prints on system error instead of system out. We can then use this, for example, in my application again, and to simply fire the event. We have two listeners registered, so I expect that we see hello world 2 times, once on the arrow, print error, arrow standard out and error out. Okay, let's see if this works. Yeah, right, this time at least it worked. But if I look at it exactly, I said they are ordered by their ranking and said, okay, arrow has ranking 10, none or standard has ranking 2. Actually, arrow should come first, but arrow came second. I think I did something wrong again, but this time I know what I did. I forgot to define here that this is an integer, actually, because now it interpreted as a string, but the service ranking actually declares that this type has to be an integer. Yeah, stupid me, I forgot this and made this wrong in this case, and now I fixed it and everything works. This might sound now like a little artificial example or error, but I have to admit I made exactly this error when preparing this demo, and it took me way more time than I would like to admit to fix it. So I saved you this. So how could component property type annotation save us from here? For example, for the service ranking, we could use the existing service ranking component property type, and for the my event handler, we can define our own component property type just by declaring a new interface, naming it my event type, adding a class value and annotating it with add component property type. Now the PDE DS processor knows that this is a component property type and will generate a component, or sorry, the wrong one, generate a corresponding property for this. And the nice thing about this is that I don't have to recall. I mistyped. Right. I don't have to write the string all the time. I usually get the types right immediately because the compiler yells at me if I do them wrong. And if I launch the application again, everything should hopefully still work. It does. Perfect. Great. And yeah, this works well so far. Another example, so this was kind of an artificial example, how to use component property types. They can also be used, for example, in the Eclipse platform code base. For example, you can use the existing or use the event topics component property type provided by the OSGi service, event service, and implement EventHandler and specify that you listen to the app startup completed event, and then you can, for example, implement a greeter that does something at app startup, similar like, for example, the IStartup interface is currently doing, but without the need to define an extension for the extension point and with less dependencies. So if we use the SDK product again, we're slowly running out of time. Okay, and save this, start this. Then the SDK should start again. This time it doesn't take so long. And yeah, in between here, it has printed the welcome to Eclipse info sent by the greeter. Let's close a few of these lines. Okay. So far to this demo. A few tips and tricks besides that component property types are generally useful when working with them. Ensure, and if you use the new features, ensure that you have set the DS version in your settings to 1.4 and or 1.5 if you want to use features for them. Otherwise, some of, for example, the component annotation type, component property types are not recognized, and your features will be, or your services will be missing some properties, which also happened to me when applying some of these types to the Eclipse platform. Also, always for your own component property types, never use the retention policy source. This may work in the workspace, but since some of the build tools that processes in Tycho, namely the bnd-lib, works on the compiled classes, using the retention policy source is not sufficient, because obviously then the annotation is not retained in the class file, so you should use at least class or better runtime. And you can also replace things like Eclipse extensions, like the IStartup extension, in a way more flexible, since you can also react to different events, not only to startup. The last thing I want to talk about really quickly, because I have only 4 minutes left actually, is the in the M2E, it's actually an M2E feature, but it's related to PDE. It's the M2E PDE connector, which allows to use plain Maven project seamlessly with plugin projects if these Maven projects generate their OSGi manifest, for example, via the bnd-maven-plugin or the maven-bundle-plugin. So these are Maven projects that are OSGi aware, let's say it like this, but are not plugin projects. For example, let's assume we want to add a new method to the SLF4J logger. We can, I will just demonstrate that the repository is clean, nothing to change. So this is currently at the 2.0.16 release. And if we, for example, import the SLF4J API, then we are now using the the logger class from this Maven project, since SLF4J is clearly not a plugin project, but just a plain Maven project, which uses the maven-bundle-plugin. But we can compile against it in a plugin project, and we could, for example, add a new method. For let's name it log Eclipse status, which just forwards to info and prints, for example, Eclipse for the win. Now we can add this new method we wanted to add to SLF4J. Probably it won't be added in reality, but let's pretend it would be. Log Eclipse status. We just call it without, we still have a SLF4J logger, so that's still the same type. And if we just launch this we will then see that the greeter has printed here Eclipse for the win. So it just picked up the Maven plugin in a Eclipse application launch from PDE without doing anything manually. So this is actually quite convenient if you, for example, if you want to do changes or contribute changes to plain Maven projects that are OSGi aware but not plugin projects. Okay. Then to my last slides, a few miscellaneous and a little bit PDE off topics things are also that we have in the manifest editor. We have a new modify button, which allows us to change the execution environment of the plugin project together with the JDT compiler settings, namely the class path file and the JDT core settings, with one button. So you don't have to modify don't have to do these changes manually by first modifying the manifest, and then modifying the class path or respectively the JDT compiler settings in general. This can now be done with one click. In general, there are more version ranges with upper bounds added to package imports on attributes and features. You maybe have also noticed that there are less attributes written into your feature XML files. And the off-topic part is at least the Eclipse SDK is now supporting new OS and Arch combinations, namely Windows on ARM and Linux on RISC-V 64. And if you're wondering if the Eclipse SDK is working well on Windows on ARM, I think the few failures are not related to the Eclipse Windows on ARM, but this demo was totally run on an ARM laptop, so it looks quite well. We hopefully will provide Eclipse packages for these architectures as well, but we are waiting for for Tamarind providing Windows on ARM, which they said will happen hopefully very soon. It didn't happen yet, at least it wasn't the case yesterday. Maybe it's already happened or in the next days, so we're looking forward, hopefully. Okay, that's it. Almost in time, only 40 seconds over. Thank you for your attention, and join the buff in very soon this evening. Thank you very much. And a few links to the features that were presented, if you want to. Any questions? Everything clear? Yes, sure. I'm glad you asked. I assume that maybe I will have some spare time, but yeah, this was maybe too optimistic. Manifest, modify button, sure. You go to the manifest and you see it here. Yeah. Touchpad is always a little bit difficult. For example, to move it from Java 17 to, for example, 21, you just click this, or maybe let's completely, just to demonstrate it. We have here the JDT settings, we have the class path, which are both currently set to Java 17, and if you modify this, you set it, or for example to 21, you see that all these values have changed at once. So, yeah. That's great. Yeah, that's a really great feature. Yeah. You can, yeah, if you do mask changes, you can also do search and replace, but if you don't do that, it's very, very handy and convenient. Any more questions? Yes, please. They are not included. They are ignored. So if you want to include them, you have to specify them as root dependencies. Yeah. More questions? No. Then thank you very much.
So